Chapter 45:17. The giant bone bird is 100 feet wide, and if its wings hang from the sky, every time it is fanned, it tears the void and explodes. The strong wind that it set off directly turned into several thick buckets of tornadoes, like turning the surroundings into a sea of anger and rolling away. Nine Musk was blown a little by this fierce and powerful wind, and his face was pale. Sword saw Wu Shuang, frowned, waved a virtual force, turned into a mask, to resist the violent wind for Joshan. Thanks. Nine Musk glanced at Jen Wushuang gratefully, then lowered her head and gasped slightly. Anyway. Jen Wushuang nodded his head, and then did not answer any more, but sat down on his knees and practiced silently. The strong wind kept blowing Jen Wushuang's hair. Ju Mu stood behind Jen Wushuang and silently looked at Jen Wushuang's back. He tried to say something, but before he could say anything, he was swallowed again. Until hesitated for a long time, she said softly, "Mr. Shuang, what happened that day?" "Sorry, I didn't think so much at that time, I was too selfish to take care of your feelings." Jen Wushuang, who was sitting in front of him, had no expression on Wen Yang's face, his eyes were always closed, but a sigh was made in his mouth. He sword warriors acted in his life, and he will always report. "You bully me, and I return you 10 feet. But after all, he was never a narrow-minded man with a small belly. Naturally, he couldn't hold his breath with a small musk deer. He didn't want to deal with 9 musk for one reason. After all, he is not a person of the void universe. Fundamentally, he is destined that his sword Wushuang future will stand opposite these 9 musk deer. Therefore, no matter whether it is the 9 musk deer or the elder wind elder who is not thin, he does not want to involve too many causes and effects. It wasn't until a long time before Ju Shifang heard Jen Wushuang's bland words. "Anyway, the matter of that day, Wu is not attentive, and you don't need to worry about it." Hearing this, Ju Mu could not help but tremble at the apex of his heart. "It is good." Her voice is higher than that. Subsequently, the two did not speak again. A few days later, a dark blue star field has arrived. In the middle of the star field, a mountain gate is like a monster's beak. Mist double, the underworld has arrived. 9 Musk softly spoke. Jen Wushuang opened his eyes and stood up. Before reaching the Yinyan Palace completely, a thick body of corpse slammed into the nose, which is much thicker than the refining Shenzong. "This is the Hades." Jen Wushuang nodded secretly in his heart. "Let's go." Swordless steps, stepping from the skeletal bird, put the skeletal bird away. Juicy followed respectfully behind Jen Wushuang. Walking to the entrance of the gate of the Yinyan Palace, the disciples of the Yinyan Palace who were responsible for guarding the gate of the Yinyan Palace had sharp eyes, and at one glance they saw the sword Wushuang and Joshan who jumped down from the giant bone bird. "Come here is Wu Shuang, the next sovereign of Lian Shenzong?" The apprentice of the Yin Yin temple greeted him quickly and said with a smirk. "It seems to be the lord of the refining god, and has already greeted him." "Yes, it's me." Jen Wushuang nodded. "Aha, Lord Gongzhu ordered me to wait here for a long time, please go here." Immediately, the disciple of the Hades Palace hurriedly welcomed Jen Wushuang in. Although in recent years, there is some disagreement between the Hades and the Lian Shenzong because of the differences in ideas, but the two main gates are the same route. Close ally, Jen Wushuang is the next suzerain, and to the disciple of the Hades that said, it is a high-profile man who cannot help but be disrespectful. When I walked into the Hades, I was quite alive. I saw a lot of Hades disciples along the way, all of them were exuding a slight halo. At first glance, I was more able to exercise my body refined as an indestructible corpse of all things. After a while, under the leadership of this disciple, the 3 quickly came to a palace with a sloping roof. The disciple of the Yinyan Palace said, "Hister Lord Shuang, wait a minute or two here, Lord Gongzhu is approaching the first genius of our virtual universe, the contemporary Tianyao Shengtian in Tianyao Holy Land. Later, Lord Palace will welcome you." As soon as the words fell, Jen Wushuang had not spoken yet, but the 9 Musk standing behind him could not help but frown. Theoretically speaking, Jen Wushuang is the next sovereign of the Lian Shenzong, so in terms of identity, at least he must be equal to the palace master of the Hades. How can there be sword Wushuang waiting outside this door? However, she didn't say anything when she saw Jian Wushuang. She naturally wouldn't go and speak. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and said lightly, "Thank you. Please go in and let me know. Let the Lord hurry up." The Yin Palace disciple smiled. Inside the hall, two people sat cross-legged across a coffee table. The man on the left is a young man, full of brilliance, handsome features, and a white coat that wins blood. At first glance, he can't help but praise the words, "The world is like a jade, and the sun is unique. In the universe, there is a clear stream." The person on the right was covered with white gauze, and only one eye on the right was exposed. The whole person was dead, but his breath was extremely powerful. Master Gongzhu, the next sovereign lord of the refining god sect, has come. The Yin Palace disciple, who had previously answered Jian Wushuang, walked quickly to the one-eyed man, and leaned down and said softly in his ear, "Oh." It came quite quickly, let him wait outside, and grind his temper first. The one-eyed man raised a brow lightly, and then said lightly, "Disciple, understand." The apprentice of the Yin Palace hurriedly resigned, closing the door. "The lord of the underworld, but the next sovereign of the refining Shenzong is here?" The young man sitting opposite the lord of the Hades asked with a smile. "That's right, it's just a baby doll that doesn't dry out, so don't bother." The lord of the Hades Palace nodded his head, stretched out his arms, poured a cup of spiritual tea for the young man in front of him, and said with a smile, "Come, nephew Tian Yaoxian, let's continue to talk to us. The owner of the palace remembers to see you last time. You just broke through the mark and it didn't take long before you met again this time, and you have already reached the mark. Such a talent really makes the owner of this palace feel ashamed. The first day of the virtual universe is proud, and it really is a real name." Time passes slowly. Outside the main hall, Jian Wushuang stood with his hands on his back, his face expressionless. "It's 9 Musk," with a bit of dissatisfaction on his face, and whispered, "Mist Shuang, the lord of the Hades Palace is so slow. I'm afraid that I want to take the opportunity to give you a power first. Let's cut it fast." "Chaos, turn passive into active, go straight in?" Jian Wushuang smiled and replied faintly, "This person is not polite. What is lost is his face, and he will only look small, and we must not be polite." "I see." Juicy nodded, seemingly incomprehensible. 2 more hours passed, and then the disciple of the Yin Palace who was responsible for answering Jian Wushuang had just rushed over and said with a smile, "Sir, wait long, please, please." Chapter 45:18. Crunch. The gate of the hall of the Hades Palace was pushed from the inside out. A handsome-looking young man in white clothes winds the snow, holding a folding fan, and walking out of the hall with 2 respectful servants. He first glanced at Jian Wushuang, shook his head lightly, and immediately fell on Zhu Muzi behind Jian Wushuang. His eyes suddenly flashed, a flash of stunning color flashed. He narrowed his eyes, as if something was moving in his heart, but he didn't say anything, but passed by the side of Zhoushan and Jian Wushuang. Lord Tianyao, walk slowly. The Yin Palace disciple respectfully saw off the young man, then looked at Jian Wushuang, reached out and made a pose in the inside, said with a smile, "Lord Mist Shuang, go, Lord Gongzhu is waiting for you." Jian Wushuang nodded his head and walked in. As soon as Juicy was about to keep up, he saw the apprentice of the Yin Palace step out, stopped her, and said, "This girl stops. My house owner only let the fog. His Excellency went in alone, but he didn't tell the younger, but let others in too." Wu Jumu heard, she could not help but frown. She didn't want to stop here, for some reason. Just now that the glorious sun Yarrow looked at her that day made her feel uneasy, and that look she had seen on Yang Dan's face. "No matter. 9 Musk, you are here waiting for me, no one can hurt you with me here." Qi Jian Wushuang glanced at Zhoushan, and said lightly, stepped out and entered the hall. When the Josie heard the words of Jian Wushuang, she felt relieved in her heart and stopped saying anything. Creak. The wooden door of the hall was closed again. Yang Jian Wushuang held his head high, Yu Shulin stood, and went in 1 step. The room was slightly dim, and an elder man covered with grey bandages, showing only one eye in his right eye, sat cross-legged in front of a coffee table. This person is the palace master of the Hades. Mist Double, right? Come, sit. He stretched out his hand toward the opposite side of the coffee table, motioning Jian Wushuang to sit down. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and sat opposite the main director of the palace. Mist Shuang, the approximate thing, the guy in the Badlands has summoned the owner of the palace and said that you are the next master of the refining deities. The main theme of the Hades Palace is flat. He reached out and poured a cup of tea for Jian Wushuang, and continued to say, we have told Hades about the situation of the Hades and the Lian Shenzong. Although we have some hatred recently, we still haven't as far as Old Death is concerned. After all, we have the same roots and ancestors. We were once the closest people, so, at the beginning of the feast, the lord of this palace will go to you to practice the sect of God personally to witness your ceremony. It is good. Jian Wushuang didn't say much, reached out and raised his teacup to take a sip. The two chatted a few words casually, and the lord of the Hades Palace waved his hand and made a weary path. Well, Wushuang, the lord of the palace knows that you are now on the throne, and you are busy with business, so I will not leave you much. Later, when this lord arrives at your refining deities, then he will gather with you carefully. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang still didn't know where. The owner of the Hades Palace was about to rush off. Have a good rest, then go ahead. After saying this, Jian Wushuang lowered the teacup, got up and stood up, and walked towards the door. Yin Gong Palace Lord, looking at the back of Jian Wushuang leaving, a cold hum in his nose, shook his head disdainfully. He pushed open the wooden door and walked out of the dark room, but Jian Wushuang's brow frowned. 9 Musk, gone. Master Wushuang, your maid, was invited by the Lord Tianyaro to go to the God Wine Pavilion. The Mingyin disciple, who was outside, walked over and said, Son of Heaven's Yarrow, have you been to God's wine house? Wu Jianshuang heard the words and couldn't help frowning again. Who is Lu Zhoumu? He thinks he knows a little bit about it. He is the personal maid who the Lord Sect of God has personally ordered to give him. It is impossible for him to suddenly follow someone halfway. And this Son of Heaven Yarrow, he also heard that, it is the recognized first genius of the virtual universe. The practice is not yet a virtual age, but has already reached the level of 3 marks, and the background is the most from the virtual universe. Tianyaro Holy Land, one of the strong Taoism, can be described as a collection of heaven and earth, and the atmosphere is transported in one body. Let's talk about its status in the virtual universe, even more so than Jian Wushuang in the divine universe, or even worse, take me to. Jian Wushuang frowned and said, Yes. Seeing the coldness in Jian Wushuang's eyes, the disciple of the Yinyan Palace jumped a brow, and quickly took Jian Wushuang towards the God Wine Pavilion. For him, the heavenly sun is a dragon-like figure on that day, and Jian Wushuang is also a behemoth he can't afford to provoke. He was just along the way, but he couldn't help but hint at Jian Wushuang. It's probably that the Son of Heaven Yarrow fancy your maid, you quickly become a good friend, and give your servant to the Son of Heaven Yarrow, you can just become a good relationship with the Son of Heaven Yarrow. With these words, although the disciples of the Yinyan Palace did not understand so clearly, they generally had such a meaning. He didn't notice that Jian Wushuang's brow was getting colder and colder. A moment later, under the leadership of this Yinyan disciple, he turned left and right, and Shenzhou Pavilion arrived. Shenzhou Pavilion is an entertainment place built by the Hades Palace. It contains the top variety of wines in the virtual universe. Often, the disciples of the Hades Palace will ask about 3 or 5 friends to go to this godhouse. Just relax. Cultivation practice. The individual is next to the practice word. He entered Shenzhou Pavilion, and this disciple of the Yinyan Palace went straight to a box on the 2nd floor with Jian Wushuang. Opening the door of the box lightly, Jian Wushuang stepped in. There were 3 people at a wine table. Sacred son of Tianyaro, Joshan, Yinshan, who is the first disciple of the Yinyan Palace, and 2 old slaves who stood behind Tianyaro www.mtlnovel.com. Seeing Sword Wushuang coming in, Zhu Mu's eyes flashed a distress for help, while Tianyaro Shengzi slowly opened a smile. Have you been the new sovereign Lord Wushuang? Tong Tianyaro Shengzi smiled rather than laughed. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. Nodded his head and said, It's me. Sheng Tianyaro smiled brightly, and stretched out his hand. Come, sit, Misty, drink a few drinks together. After Yin Wushuang sat down, Yin Shan, the the first apprentice of the Yin Palace next to the Son of Heaven, was responsible for pouring him a glass of wine. Mr. Tianyao raised his glass, raised his sword to Wu Shuang, and narrowed his eyes and smiled. Mr. Shuang, this is your maid called Joshan, right? Ben Sheng told her to drink a few glasses of wine. You should not mind, right? Qi Jian Wu Shuang looked at him lightly, without a reply. The disregard of Wu Jian's unparalleled cannot help but let Tianyao Shengzi hold up his glass. Alas, instead of getting angry, he continued, "Come on, everyone toast together." The words fell, and Yin Shan, who was in charge of a company, took a quick sip. Juicy looked at Jian Wushuang, and when she was about to speak, Jian Wushuang gave her a slightly restless look. Immediately, Jian Wushuang drank this glass of wine as well. He put down his glass, and Jian Wushuang silently looked at the first day of this famous universe, Tianyao Shengzi. He would like to see what trick this person is going to play. Chapter 45:19. Inside the number 1 box of the Tianji of the God Wine Pavilion. Everyone toasted and drank together, but under the seemingly harmonious picture, they couldn't hide a trace of coldness. That's right. Tianyao Shengzi looked at Jian Wushuang and Zhu Mu, both drinking a glass of wine. A smile appeared on his face. Everyone in the world says that I am an immortal, but the radical next to the immortal is the first person. This son of sun is a candid, uninhibited man who loves rivers and mountains' beauties alone, and a glass of fine wine. This time, the son of sun first said clearly, no one can run the virtual force to melt this drink and force it out. We must accompany Ben Shengzi to get drunk for 3,600 games. How? As soon as this remark was finished, Yin Shan, the chief disciple of the Yin Palace who was in charge of companionship, quickly echoed, Master Sheng is right. This time, Lord Sun has finally come to our palace, and we must accompany you to drink. Okay, you kid, you're on the right track. Tianyao Shengzi stretched out his hand, and smiled and touched the top of the Yin Mountain, as if he was petting the puppies who sold his goodies, and then stretched out the glass again and raised it to Zhu Mu. Come on, 9 Musk, and have a drink with Ben Shengzi. Zhu Shi heard that she was already crimson and blushing, and flashed a moment of hesitation. This divine wine is made from 100 brewed fragrant fruits, which is specially used for drinking of trace-level virtuosos. However, she is a star-rated virtuoso, and she has already been a little bit alcoholic. He wanted to refuse, but when Joshu saw a seeming smile, in fact his eyes were bleak and dazzling. She had figured out the identity of the young man in front of her. The Holy Son of Tianyao Holy Land, the Holy Son of Tianyao. The first day of the universe that swept the world is proud. Tianyao Holy Land is one of the strongest immortal dharmas in the void universe. There are more than 16-marked virtual lords in the Holy Land. Although refining God is also one of the top forces, it is worse than Tianyao Holy Land not a little bit. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that now the refining suzerain is about to step down, and Jian Wushuang will become the new suzerain. Once she offended Tianyao, it was tantamount to offending Tianyao. At that time, not to mention how the Tianyao Holy Land might dominate the sect of sects, I am afraid that a sentence will be released in the universe. Gurus tilde. Thinking of this, the 9 Musk silver teeth bite and raised the glass to drink. Suddenly, a flame seemed to burn in her body. Joshan only felt that the blood in her body was boiling, her head was dizzy, and she was extremely uncomfortable. That's right. Tianyao Shengzi smiled with satisfaction and raised his glass again. Unexpectedly, the girl of 9 Musk has a low profile, and the amount of alcohol is really good. Come, give Ben Shengzi a face, and another glass. Seeing this, Joshan finally couldn't help it. His face changed slightly, but there was still a strong smile on Qiao's face, and he said, Master, I can't really drink. Can't drink? After hearing this, Mr. Qiao's eyes narrowed slowly, the smile on his face converged, and his voice became cold. 9 Musk girls, it seems that you don't give this face to Ben Shengzi. 9 Musk heard a smile on her face. Sir, I don't mean this. As soon as she was about to explain Tianyao interrupted her explanation and continued to say, 9 Musk girls, even if you do think about yourself, you have to think about the gate behind you. Think about your master, Wu Shuang. Hearing this, Zhu Shijiao trembled. This naked threat has become apparent. Nine Musk glanced at the expressionless, silent swordsman beside him, and couldn't help but utter a grin in his heart. From the beginning to the end, no matter whether she is refining Shenzong or outside, she is in the hands of a great man. I drink. Quivering and reaching out his hand, Joshu took his glass and prepared to drink it. Seeing this, Tianyao Shengzi brought a mild smile on his face again, nodded with satisfaction, and Yinshan, who was next to him, also had an unpleasant smile on his face. What Tianyao Shengzi was going to do, of course, he knew very well. Snapped. At this time, Nine Musk, holding a wine glass, preparing to drink a right hand, was grabbed by a big hand with a strong force, from the big bones of the big hands, so that she could not move at all. Jomu looked up dully, only to see Jian Wushuang's sharp-edged side face, indifferent. Next moment, a cold, low voice came from Jian Wushuang's mouth. Your face. You rubbish, I hit 10 with one hand, and you also deserve to be faced on a certain side of the fog. As soon as this remark was made, the audience was shocked. The companion Yinshan had a shocking expression on his face. He didn't expect that this Wushuang from the refining Shenzong was so presumptuous. Does he know who is the Son of Heaven who is sitting in front of him? Bold. Immediately, as soon as he slammed the table, he wanted to teach Tianyao Shengzi the lesson in front of him. However, before he could act, Jian Wushuang's eyes rose sharply by 3 inches and he looked at him. Boom. Instantly, Yinshan just felt a big horror between him and his life. Jian Wushuang's cold eyes looked like 2 magical swords that split the sky and shattered the endless sky, and shot into him, kill him thousands of times. Alas! Yinshan fell to the ground with a buttock, and a chill rushed from the back to the top of his head, like a falling ice cellar. On another look, his entire back was wet with cold sweat. And Tianyao Shengzi, with a smile on his face, the smile hardened. Immediately, Tianyao Shengzi's face was gloomy to the extreme. Mist Shuang, even your sovereign lord refining, did not dare to talk to this son. Are you trying to die? Knelt down and apologize, and donate this maid to Ben Shengzi. Ben Shengzi can treat you as just now. After speaking, the Son of Heaven, Yaro, got up and stood up, looking down at the sword unparalleled. However, he had just stood up and had not stood upright. I kneel. Jian Wushuang sneered, the chaotic domineering body urged, his right hand suddenly stretched out, and re-patted on the head of Tianyao Shengzi. Kneel down. Boom. Endless power erupted from the palms of swordless pairs. Tianyao Shengzi only felt like 1,000,000 mountains came down, and the whole person fell to the ground fiercely, kneeling directly on the floor with a spider-like crack. For today's Jian Wushuang, as long as he does not enter the invincible supreme, no one is his enemy. On this day, the Holy Sun, but 3 marks, is worse than Luo Ming, his big head of the Red Whale Gang, dare to pray in front of him. Little Lord. Master Santa. The 2 old slaves guarding the door of the box suddenly became furious when they saw this. As soon as they were about to kill Jian Wushuang, they saw Jian Wushuang's voice indifferent. Taro. Click. A void crack split from the back of Jian's body, and the Taro corpse shrouded in a wide black robe stepped forward, stretched out his hands, and blasted towards the 2 old slaves. Chapter 45:20, Boom. The corpse of Tai Luo's corpse blasted out, and the endless power burst out suddenly. Dao Wen circulated in his hands, turning into a violent sword spirit, and slammed on the chests of the 2 old slaves. These 2 slave servants of Tianyao Shengzi, but first entered the realm of traces. How could they be the opponent of Tai Luo's corpse? The dead bones of the tiger are still there, even if the Taro Supreme Divine Corpse today is only just entering the Supreme Realm, but how can they compete with it? Puff. Suddenly, the 2 old slaves were hit by 2 space battleships, their bodies suddenly smashed through the gate of Shenjij, and flew out fiercely. Call out. The 2 little black dots flickered in the air, but these 2 old slaves directly punched the 2 corpses of Taro God's corpse, blasting out of the Hades and even the entire Hades area. This. Suddenly, the Yinyin, who was paralyzed in the ground, looked at the scene, stunned and trembling. What did he see? Tianyao Shengzi was slapped into the head by the fog, kneeling stiffly. Tianyaro Shengzi's 2 old servants were smashed by Wushan's corpse and smashed out of the Yinyin star field. Is this too violent? Immediately afterwards, the Yinyin first disciple hit the spirit. Event. Something big is coming. Mist Shuang, you are looking for death. The head of the sword was held by Jian Wushuang, and Tianyaro Shengzi, who was kneeling down on the ground, twisted his extreme features to the extreme, and under the roar, he spurred all the imaginary forces in his body. Suddenly, the imaginary force in the heavenly sun's body resembles a whirlpool rotating at high speed, and a force sufficient to destroy the stars bursts out from his body, like a tide, rolling in, and the sword is unparalleled. Death's right hand on his head smashed open. Oh! Feeling the impact force from his hand, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but bow slightly. As the first day of the emptiness of the universe, the Prince of Yarrow Yarrow is proud of this skill. This force of impact is no less weak than the four-marked vagrants in terms of might. If Jian Wushuang hasn't broken the middle extreme, maybe he has to sit on the wax at this moment. But unfortunately, you are far from enough. With a cold hum, Jian Wushuang's right hand was full of blue tendons. He grabbed the head of Tianyaro Shengzi and slammed it severely. He actually smashed the body of Tianyaro Shengzi directly and threw it out of the wine hall. Seeing this scene, Joshan couldn't help feeling a little sorrowful. Mist Shuang, after all, this person is the son of Tianyaro Holy Land. If we do this, we won't cause you any trouble. Anyway. Jian Wushuang shook his head and stepped out, already appearing outside of the God Wine Pavilion, overlooking Tianyaro Shengzi, who was smashed to the ground by him. The turmoil in the fighting between the two people immediately caught the attention of all the Yinyin Palace disciples inside and outside the Shenzhou Pavilion. What? The son of Tianyaro was thrown out? Who is so bold? How dare you do something to Tianyaro Shengzi? For a moment, everyone was dismayed. Immediately, they saw a step out of the God Wine Pavilion, stepping in the void, expressionless swordless pair. It's him. New sovereign of the reincarnation? I remember that this person didn't break through the mark shortly before. How did he smash Tianyaro Shengzi out? Who knows this? I guess it is a sneak attack. After all, Tianyaro Shengzi is the first day in our universe. He is invincible in the same realm. What's wrong with this fog? It should not be Tianyaro Shengzi's opponent. Everyone said one after another. Mist double, despicable maggot, you it. In the Lord's wine, the expression of the holy son of Tianyaro has been distorted to the extreme. The surging killing intentions almost condensed into substance and circulated in his eyes. He was born proud, no matter his family background, or his invincible luck, and his ancient talents, he has developed a high-mindedness and does not put anyone in his eyes. When has he been so humiliated? A series of hatreds continued to wash in his body, and in a short moment, the eyes of Shengyaro Shengyar became flushed, and anxious to destroy the sword unparalleled corp. With a low roar, Tianyaro Shengzi was full of light and killed toward the sword Wushuang. Jian Wushuang saw this, his expression was indifferent, and he calmly said, Mist said, hit you with one hand, hit you with one hand. Next moment, I saw Jian Wushuang's left hand behind him, his right hand condensed into a fist, and smashed towards the heavenly sun. This fist can break the stars and the sun, and the mountains and rivers fall. Countless golden lights radiate from Jian Wushuang's right fist, as if pushing a round of rolling sun, like a golden carriage, driving out from the center of the sun, and ramming towards the sun of Tianyaro. Click, click. Under this punch, the whole void exudes the sound of a broken mirror, causing ripples. Rewind. Suddenly, many disciples of the Hades Palace who were watching the bustling life collapsed and flew directly to the cosmic starry sky. Boom. This punch was finally banged on the smashed Tianyaro Shengzi. Moment. Tianyaro Shengzi flew out at a faster speed than when he rushed, and the whole earth shook. But soon, in the sky of the Hades, a dark yellow mask appeared faintly, releasing the power of restraint, and compressing the aftermath of the battle between the two as much as possible. Otherwise, with the sword Wushuang's fist, it is enough to blast the sun, and I am afraid that the aftermath of the scatter will be enough to disintegrate the entire Yin Palace. Mist Shuang, you should kill. Tianyaro Shengzi climbed from the ground. Junlang's face was already full of twisted madness, his eyes turned into a bloodthirsty red. He killed the sword again. Stubbornness. Sword Wushuang shook his head, stepped out in one step, and suddenly appeared as if moving instantly, in front of Qianyao Shengzi. His right fist pounded out like a mad dragon, turning the surrounding 10 feet of land into a sea of tornadoes. The lines of the sword Wushuang's right fist flowed, and the sound of trembling on the road was emitted, like a giant axe that broke the ground and lay across the head of Qianyao Shengzi. Mr. Qianyao, right? Wu, teach you how to be a man today. Inside the main hall of the Hades. The lord of the Yin Palace, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly jumped. What happened? Open your eyes slowly. The master of the Yin Palace looks up. Flip-flop. At that moment, a disciple of the Hades Palace hurriedly walked in with a complex expression. Master Gongzhu. The event is not good. Refining Shenzong's next ruler, Wu Shuang, fights with Qianyao Shengzi outside Shenzhou Pavilion. What? The main pupil of the Hades Palace shrunk slightly, and then the eyes moved quickly, and his gaze passed directly through the nine-nether void, and saw the scene where Jian Wushuang burst into the heavenly sun. Jack. Suddenly, the host of the Hades Palace had a pale face and a slight movement of his shoulders, and the whole person had disappeared into the hall. Chapter 45:21. God wine caught outside. The sky was full of smoke. It is enough to destroy the galaxy and crush the stars, like a violent monster roaring in the roar, but has not waited for it to spread out, but it was stopped by the formation method in the Hades. Mist and mist, the iniquity of heaven is unforgivable, and the iniquity of man cannot live. You are looking for death. Qianyao Shengzi trembled and stood up from the ground. At this moment, his hair was loose, his nose and eyes were bleeding, and where he was half a minute ago, he looked like a saintly son. Instead, he was like a murderer who had been forced to death. However, his appearance was embarrassing, a magnificent and horrible, indescribable Xeon power, but it began to condense on him. A plume of smoke and thick red light began to condense in his chest, and its overflowing breath directly wiped out the surrounding starry sky and turned into a chaos. When the disciples in the Yin Palace who watched the battle saw this, they felt a chill in their hearts. No. It's false. Mr. Qianyao has lost his mind and is desperate. Block. What do you want to block? Hurry up and sue the palace master. Only the master palace master can solve all this. Suddenly, the crowd watching the scene outside the Divine Wine Pavilion was panic-stricken. Is it false? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He has been in the Void Universe for some time. In his opinion, most of the Void Universe are almost the same as the Divine Universe. There is not much difference. The only thing worth mentioning is that every vicar in the Void Universe will some accompanying magical powers are exploding. The virtual explosion can instantly explode one's body up to 100 times the strength of the whole body. It is the virtual man of the virtual universe, the biggest killing move. Sorry, I do too. Click. Next moment. Jian Wushuang raised his arm, spread his 5 fingers, and moved in the direction of Qianyao Shengzi. In his palm, the air machine began to rotate, just like a gyroscope. The speed of rotation was getting faster and faster. Boom. Finally, a small black vortex like a black hole emerged in the palm of the sword. The magical power of Jian Wushuang's whole body boiled up, and then he frantically gathered toward his palm, gradually forming a fist-sized black horror ball. Black burst. There is still black in the burst. The virtual explosion is divided into 7 grades. The lowest grade is white, the second grade is gold, and the third grade is purple. How many are black? How have you never heard of it? I don't know. But the power of compression in this black virtual explosion is terrible. It is even stronger than the Prince of Qianyao. The Prince of Qianyao is a 9-grade virtual explosion. Many disciples of the Hades Palace looked at this scene and said in amazement, "Is it black?" Jian was eyes flickered. As early as when Jian Wushuang swallowed the nucleus of virtual power given to him by the Elder Banshan, he awakened the virtual explosion, but for the first time since awakening for so long. As for the power, Jian Wushuang's heart is quite looking forward. Go die. Just then, Qianyao Shengzi broke out first. The crimson sphere on his chest, like a cannonball, shot fiercely at Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, the air was overflowing, the earth was cracking, and the mask over the Yin Palace was like a bowl with an inverted buckle. Click, click. Like a broken mirror, this guardian array that blocked all the mighty aftermaths made an unpleasant and broken sound. A trace of the air machine overflowed from the mask, shaking the whole Yin Palace violently. Just when Jian Wushuang also planned to perform a virtual explosion. Stop! A sound rang out 100 miles away, and then, I saw a gurgling sound covered with bandages, stepping down, as if stepping out of ripples in the void, standing straight between Jian Wushuang and Tianyao Shengzi. A bandage burst, revealing dry, pale, grey palms. The master of the Yin Palace grabbed his right hand, and directly grasped the blast from the Son of Heaven Yarrow, destroying all the horrible orbs. As if marbles fell into the hands, the exploding orb of the heavenly Son of Heaven fell into the palm of the Lord of the Nether Palace, a rapid rotation, and sparks of countless sparks. However, the palm of the Lord of the Yin Palace was just like a 9-day pouring of molten iron. No matter how powerful this explosive ball was, it still couldn't hurt the slightest. Finally, the speed of rotation gradually slowed down and was caught by the Lord of Yin off. A breath of 6-marked virtual respect emanated from the main body of the Yin Palace. In this atmosphere, whether it is the Holy Son of Tianyao or the Sword Unparalleled, it is as small as an ant. 6 marks, or Invincible Supreme, is too big and different from other ranks of Vicious Supreme. It is not an order of magnitude at all. Jian Wushuang saw this, and the light of the eye moved slightly, and regained the virtual explosive force that was ready to go. Master of the Hades, will you stop me for this kid? However, Tianyao Shengzi kept on, turning his eyes and staring at the Lord of the Yin Palace. The Lord of the Yin Palace sighed lightly. He is the one who stands on the side of the universe. He has 6 marks of vanity, and naturally he doesn't need to care too much about the Son of Heaven. But Tianyao Shengzi represents not only himself, but also the behemoth of Tianyao Holy Land behind him. Tianyao Holy Land, one of the most powerful and immortal dermas of the Void Universe, has a history that almost completely extinguishes the entire Void Universe. Even if the Refining God sect and the Hades are merged, it is estimated that it will not be the opponent of the Tianyao Holy Land. And Tianyao Shengzi has amazing potential in itself, and he will certainly be able to sit on an equal footing with him in the future. If not helpless, he was really reluctant to come out to intervene in this muddy water. But he didn't come out, just afraid that the whole Hades would have to be destroyed. Holy Son, give the Lord of the Palace a face. How has this matter been revealed? The Lord of the Yin Palace said to Tianyao Shengzi. Tianyao Shengzi did not speak, but his face became gloomy. Although he is arrogant, he is not stupid. He is indeed very talented, and behind it stands the giant behemoth of Tianyao Holy Land. Don't look at the Lord of the Hades, who is polite to himself, but the son of Tianyao knows that he does not have the ability and qualification to be a 6-mark vanity. Go wild before you. After the Lord of the Yin Palace finished speaking, he looked at Xiong Jian Wushuang, and his face became a little blue. Miss Double, Yarrow Huang, did that guy teach you to do things? I think you want to drag the refining gods to nowhere is ever more. Jian Wushuang heard nothing and shrugged. Mist Shuang, Ba Huang didn't leave, and it can still protect you for a few minutes, but if Ba Huang once leaves, when you really take charge of the refining deities, if you act like that, sooner or later, it will bring the disaster to the refining deity. The Lord of the Yin Palace took a deep look at Jian Wushuang and said, "This sentence, he came from the heart." Chapter 45-22 Kneel down. In the Divine Wine Pavilion's Sky Room No. 1. Everyone raised their cups and drank together. Under the seemingly harmonious scene, a trace of coldness could not be concealed. That's more like it. The Sky Glory Holy Sun looked at Jian Wushuang and Zhu Shuo. They both drank the wine in their cups and smiled. The mortals in the world all say that we are immortals, but forget immortal, we are still human, after all. I have an open personality all my life, uninhibited and wanton. I like the rivers, mountains, beauties, and wine in cups. This time, I'll make it clear that no one is allowed to use void energy to cleanse the alcohol, and we must drink it the natural way. You must accompany me to get drunk for 3,600 rounds. How about it? As soon as he said this, the head disciple of the Dark Yin Palace, Yin Shan, who was in charge of accompanying them, quickly added, "The Holy Sun is right. This time, Lord Holy Sun has finally come to our Dark Yin Palace. We will definitely drink to our heart's content with you." Good, good, good. You're quite smart, kid. The Sky Glory Holy Sun stretched out his hand and patted Yin Shan's head with a smile, as if he was petting a little dog wagging its tail. Then, he raised his wine cup to Ju Sha and said, "Come, Lady Ju Sha, have another cup with me." Upon hearing this, a hint of hesitation flashed across Ju Sha's already red face. This divine wine was made from the 100 brew fragrant fruit and was specially made for Star-level Void Warriors to drink. She was only a Star-level Void Warrior and had long been unable to hold her liquor. Ju Sha wanted to refuse, but when she saw the Sky Glory Holy Sun's cold eyes, she was shaken. She had already figured out the identity of the young man in front of her. The current Holy Sun of the Sky Glory Holy Land, the Sky Glory Holy Sun. He was the #1 genius in the universe. The Sky Glory Holy Land was one of the strongest immortal orthodoxies in the Void universe. There was more than one 6-star Void Master in the Holy Land. Although the God-refining sect was also one of the top forces, it was still far inferior to the Sky Glory Holy Land. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the God-refining sect master was about to step down and Jian Wushuang would be the new sect master. If she offended the Sky Glory Holy Sun, it would be equivalent to offending the Sky Glory Holy Land. At that time, not to mention how the Sky Glory Holy Land would suppress the God-refining sect, even the God-refining sect, with Jian Wushuang as the sect master, would be unable to do anything if they spread the word in the universe. Gulp. Thinking of this, Ju Sha gritted her teeth, raised her glass, and drank it in one go. Suddenly, a flame seemed to burn in her body. Ju Sha felt her blood boiling and her head spinning. She felt extremely uncomfortable. That's the way. The Sky Glory Holy Sun smiled in satisfaction and raised his glass again. I didn't expect Miss Ju Sha's alcohol tolerance to be so good despite her low cultivation. Come, give me some face and have another cup. Seeing this, Ju Sha finally could not help it. Her expression changed slightly, but she still forced a smile on her pretty face and said in a nice voice, "Lord Holy Sun, I really can't drink anymore." "You can't drink it." Hearing this, the Sky Glory Holy Sun's eyes slowly narrowed. The smile on his face disappeared, and his voice became cold. "Lady Ju Sha, it seems like you're not giving me any face." Upon hearing this, the smile on Ju Sha's face froze. "Lord Holy Sun, that's not what I meant," she was about to explain when the Sky Glory Holy Sun interrupted her and continued, "Miss Ju Sha, even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the sect behind you and for your sect master Wushuang, right?" Upon hearing this, Ju Sha's body trembled. This undisguised threat was already obvious. Ju Sha looked at the expressionless and silent Jian Wushuang and could not help but laugh bitterly in his heart. From the beginning to the end, whether it was in the God-refining sect or outside, she was just a chess piece in the hands of the big shots. "Ill drink." Stretching out her trembling hand, Ju Sha picked up the glass and was about to drink it. Seeing this, the Sky Glory Holy Sun's face once again had a warm smile as he nodded in satisfaction. Beside him, Yin Shan also had an evil smile on his face. He knew very well what the Sky Glory Holy Sun wanted to do. Pa! At this moment, Ju Sha was holding a wine glass and was about to drink it when her right hand was grabbed by a large hand. A strong force came from this large hand, and she was unable to move. Ju Sha raised her head in a daze and only saw Jian Wushuang's angular face, which was cold and indifferent. The next moment, Jian Wushuang said in a cold and deep voice, "Your face. I can fight 10 trash like you with one hand. Do you think you're worthy of talking about face in front of me?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Yin Shan's face was filled with shock. He did not expect that Wushuang from the God-refining sect would be so presumptuous. Did he know who the Sky Glory Holy Sun sitting in front of him was? How audacious! Yin Shan slammed the table and wanted to teach this ignorant thing a lesson on behalf of the Sky Glory Holy Sun. He wanted to take credit and show off. However, before he could do anything, Jian Wushuang's divine light grew and he looked at him. Whoosh! In an instant, Yin Shan felt a great horror of life and death coming at him. Jian Wushuang's cold eyes were like two divine swords that could split the sky and earth and tear the endless sky apart. He felt like he was pierced and killed thousands of times. Thud! Yin Shan fell to the ground on his butt. A chill ran from his back to his head, making him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. When he looked again, his entire back was already drenched in a cold sweat. The smile on the Sky Glory Holy Sun's face froze, and his face slowly darkened. Wushuang, even your sect master doesn't dare to speak to me like this. Are you seeking death? Kneel down and apologize. Give your maidservant to me, and I'll take your words as frivolous and drunken words. I won't take it to heart. After saying that, the Sky Glory Holy Sun stood up and looked down at Jian Wushuang. However, just as he got up, his body was still not straight. I kneel. Jian Wushuang sneered and activated his Chaos Overlord body. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and smacked the Sky Glory Holy Sun's head. You kneel. Rumble. Endless power burst out from Jian Wushuang's palm. The Sky Glory Holy Sun felt as if a million mountains were pressing down on him. He knelt on the ground, and his knees left a web of cracks on the ground. As far as Jian Wushuang was concerned, as long as he was not an invincible supreme, no one could defeat him. The Sky Glory Holy Sun was only at the 3-star level. He was even inferior to Luo Ming, the chief of the Crimson Whale Gang. How would he dare to be impudent in front of him? Young Master, Lord Holy Sun. The two old slaves guarding the door of the private room were furious. Just as they were about to charge at Jian Wushuang said indifferently, Tarot. Crack. A crack appeared in the void behind Jian Wushuang. The divine corpse of Tarot, who was covered in a large black robe, took a step forward and stretched out his hands to attack the two old slaves. Chapter 45-23. Ill Wait. Welcome to Refining God Sovereign Wushuang. Welcome to the Refining God Sovereign Wushuang. Suddenly, the whole square of Refining Godzong was boiling, and tens of thousands of practitioners of Refining Godzong fell to the ground and shouted in unison. The sound of the sword unparalleled is greeted by the sound of billowing sounds, resounding through the whole Refining deities. At this moment, the sword is unparalleled, and it has been replaced with a lord's robe. He has a beautiful face and a cold eyebrow, but he exudes a sense of calmness like a prison, which makes people feel indignant. Especially those eyes, which are extremely sharp and dazzling, make people dare not look straight. Get up. Jian Wushuang looked indifferent, holding his right hand up. Suddenly, tens of thousands of disciples stood up. The ascension ceremony of the Refining Gods sect was gradually ended in the congratulations of Wanchao. After embarrassing each other's forces who came today, Jian Wushuang personally bid farewell to them. Among them, the face of the Lord of the Underworld Palace has not been very good-looking, and before Jian Wushuang went to give him away, he gave a cold hum. Leaving Shenzong. After that, it was the arrangement before Bahuang Shuzuan left. In the Lord's Hall, there were only two men, Jian Wushuang and Bahuang Xuanzuan. I think this is my seat. I was sitting here for the last time. Bahuang Zhuozun sat on the throne that only the prince could sit on, with his hands resting on the black gold armrests, and his thumb slightly rubbed against the fine lines on the armrests, with a slight emotion. Jian Wushou stood beside him, bowed his head silently, and said nothing. Mist Shuang, I haven't had much contact with you. The impression you give to this suzerain is that you are a well-thought-out and profound mansion. This is a good thing, but it is also a bad thing. This seat can have a faint feeling, what seems to be hidden in your heart, but this thing is unpredictable and inconceivable. This seat is not someone who breaks the casserole and asks to the end. This seat only hopes that, no matter what, you have taken over the seat of this seat and become the sovereign of the sect of Refining God, then everything is best to focus on the interests of the sect and personal interests. Don't make the point of bringing the sacred God to the abyss. To be honest, Yang Dan is inferior to you in terms of patience and instinct, but if Yang Dan does not die, this seat will still pass the position of suzerain to Yang Dan. Ba Huang Shuzuan slowly said that it was the first time to push his heart with Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang silently said nothing but sighed. After he joined the Refining God sect, whether it is the Lord of the Refining God or Elder Moose Wind, he has a good impression on him. It's just a pity that they were destined to stand on the opposite side and meet each other in the future. By that time, what kind of scene should Jian Wushuang face in the battlefield outside the field with the 8 desolates? Ba Huang Shuzuan did not want Jian Wushuang to answer, but continued to say, Mist Shuang, this time this place is going to be the mission of this seat. It is extremely dangerous, and it is very likely that it will never come back. Therefore, please take care of the Shenzong for me. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded. The next day. It was still early in the morning, and Ba Huang Shuzuan left the refining Shenzong with the white-haired and burly old man. Under the gate of Lian Shenzong Mountain, Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes as he looked at the departure of Ba Huang Shuzuan and the white-haired burly old man. In the end, these 8 desolate lords left him a hand, and did not explain the matter of the void, and at the same time, Jian Wushuang also believed that the essence of the refining divine sect would never be so simple. Still have to fumble on your own. The sword murmured to himself. At this time, an excited voice sounded in Jian Wushuang's mind. Young master, we have discovered something new. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrow and did not rush to respond, but flashed in his eyes, and walked towards the Sovereign Hall again. Master Sovereign. See Lord Sovereign. The 2 disciples in charge of guarding the gate of the mountain rushed down on their knees and said respectfully, Well, bullish on Shan Men. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, then stepped out and straight into the sky. Countless lands shrunk under the swordless feet. Within a few breaths, Jian Wushuang fell into the sovereign's hall in one step. Inside the main hall, some servants who were responsible for serving the suzerain were cleaning the main hall of the suzerain. When he saw the sword entering, he immediately knelt down. Go out. Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. Yes. These servants retreated. He waved his hand to close the heavy gate of the sovereign's hall, and the swordless figure turned around and entered the palace that only the sovereign lord could enter. In the dormitory, there are many books, which are the secrets of the refining gods sect, and secretaries of various methods of corpse refining. In the middle, there is a yin and yang gossip array, innumerable powers and corpses, emerging from the center of the array. Swordless sat down cross-legged, silently began to absorb these weak forces. With that crystal of virtual power, Jian Wushuang's body is equivalent to an extra conversion machine, which can convert all absorbed divine power into virtual power. This yin and yang gossip array under Jian Wushuang not only controls the great ancestors of the Lian Shenzong, but also absorbs all the corpses and power of the Manzong. In other words, that is, Jian Wushuang sat on the front line of this yin and yang gossip array, and the entire power and corpse of the refining Shenzong were instilled in him alone. What a horrible amount! However, Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry to start the map at this moment, but connected the rumor with Luo Ming, the head of the Red Whale Gang. You say it carefully. Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. Observe. Luo Ming's voice excitedly said, Young master, our Red Whale Gang is responsible for staring at the congregations of the major top forces to discover that in the past few days, those top leaders in charge of the Patriarch, or the ancient elders who have been falling asleep, have all recovered after that. We all rushed towards the void. And in the void, we found that Jiu Heng Shuzun and others were unable to retreat and all shrank. This must be a major event soon. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and suddenly his eyes rose sharply by 3 inches. Look at this, is the second Holocaust going to start soon? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, I see. Last time I asked you to prepare a map and mark of the void forbidden area. Are you ready? Master Hui, the map was all drawn the day before yesterday. Luo Ming nodded hard and replied. Okay, you send the people to the refining god sect. Remember, this person must be your brother-in-law, who was planted by me that day. Jian Wushuang nodded and replied. Small understand, and arrange it immediately. Luo Ming hurried back. Well, you can arrange it, and then if anything happens, you will contact me as soon as possible. After commanding this sentence, Jian Wushuang cut off the subpoena. Chapter 45-24. Inside the Lord's dormitory. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the yin and yang gossip array, his eyes twinkling. It seems that the second catastrophe won't take long to begin, and I must increase my strength by one step before the catastrophe begins. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and muttered to himself. Although the horror of this catastrophe, Jian Wushuang has never experienced it, but he has also heard from the gods of the universe and others. The tragedy of this catastrophe can hardly be described in any words. In the catastrophe, the supremacy is like an ant, and it will fall between the clouds and hands. Only at least the Supreme will be able to protect itself. That is the invincible stage. Only Invincible Supreme can kill the quartet in the catastrophe without fear. But even the Invincible Supreme is in danger of falling. At least in the last catastrophe, just the divine power universe, the fallen Invincible Supremacy will not have fewer hands. And the current strength of Jian Wushuang, the sky is the strongest combat power below the Invincible Supremacy. Away from the true Invincible Supremacy, there is always a gap. Matrix, Kai. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and urged the yin and yang gossip array. Suddenly, the lines on the yin and yang gossip arrays flooded with countless white lights. Then, I saw that the yin and yang gossip arrays began to rotate. Rotating, a frantic influx came, pouring everything into Jian Shuang's body. The pure and vast virtual force almost burst the sword Wushuang almost in an instant. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang is a super-perfect life with amazing capacity and a chaotic domineering body. Swallow. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed, and suddenly he turned into a giant beak with a wide mouth, and swallowed up a vast amount of virtual power. Boom boom. Jian Wushuang's whole body made a roar like a thunderous thunder. Subsequently, these majestic force was transformed into pure divine power after being refined. Jian Wushuang's whole body breath began to skyrocket. There was silence in the Lord's hall. Without the command of swordless warriors, no one dared to step in. After 3 months, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes, and an extremely thick light flashed from his eyes. 3 months of practice, the increase in divine power is more than I usually practice for 3,000 years. Jian Wushuang lowered his head and opened his mouth to himself. During these 3 months, almost all the power of refining Shenzong was absorbed and refined by Jian Wushuang alone. The state of the middle extreme has not only completely stabilized in these 3 months, but also only one step to reach the peak of the middle extreme. What a horrible speed is this! If he hadn't received a message from Luo Ming of the Red Whale Gang, telling the disciples of the Red Whale Gang who had sent the map of the Void Forbidden Land that they had arrived at the refining God sect, Jian Wushuang would continue to practice at least, and he would sprint to the extreme peak. Taro. Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. A black-robed figure suddenly emerged from the shadow behind Jian Wushuang. Immediately, Jian Wushuang issued an instruction to allow the body of Tai Luo to sit on the yin and yang gossip array. A lot of corpse gas was poured into the corpse of Tai Luo God. Originally, due to the blow of Tai Shu God Emperor, the corpse of Tai Luo God could only rely on time to gradually recover from the injury, and it quickly improved. Not only that, the breath of Tai Luo's corpse also began to become strong, and gradually moved towards the middle supreme. The next step is to raise Taro's corpse to the middle and supreme realm. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and immediately opened the gate of the Lord's palace and strode out. Master Sovereign. The 2 disciples in charge of the door were already in a daze. When they saw Jian Wushuang stepping out, they couldn't help but stunned and hurriedly kneeled down to salute. Jian Wushuang pointed at their jaws slightly, and the arc of the nod was almost negligible. It was a response, and then stepped out again, which had disappeared at the gate of the Sovereign Hall. Hello, have you noticed that Wushuang is becoming more and more powerful, which makes people feel particularly unfathomable and dare not offend? After Jian Wushuang left, a disciple in charge of guarding the gate whispered. What does it mean that there is more and more momentum of the suzerain? Wushuang is the suzerain, okay? But you are right in saying this, you do know, just when the suzerain looked at me just now, I felt cold as if I were there is no secret in front of the Lord. The other disciple glanced at the disciple who spoke earlier, and then whispered the same. Well, We have all been guarding this master for 30 million years. We are still gatekeepers. How long did it take for Wushuang to become a master, and the gap between people is really too big. The disciple who spoke before said with emotion. Lian Shenzong outside the gate. A person with a sharp-billed monkey gill was hurriedly walking back and forth in front of the gate of the Shenzong mountain, scratching his ears. Well, didn't I say that? I'm here to find Master Wushuang. Let me in. This person is naturally the person Luo Ming came to be responsible for sending the Void Forbidden map. But looking at it this way, this person seems to have encountered some trouble. Shut up. Wushuang is our sovereign lord who practiced Shenzong. How can you call it out? How can you become the young master of people like you? The two young disciples in charge of guarding the mountain gate frowned suddenly, scolding. Hurry up and go, you have sharp-mouthed monkey gills, green peas with small eyes, and a ghostly whereabouts. You are not a good person at first glance. If you still don't leave, don't blame us for killing you. Another disciple disdained. The Red Whale gang helped everyone to hear this and immediately laughed. Grandma, Lao Tzu's long crooked melon is not good. The anger flickered in his eyes, and the Red Whale, who really looked crooked, helped his disciple sing, and thought silently, if it weren't for our young master's dojo, our family would have to kill you two little dolls today. Take a deep breath. This Red Whale helped the crowd to suppress their tempers, and said with a smile, please be troublesome, go with the young master. No, go with your suzerain adult whistle. Well, why aren't you guys getting into the oil and salt? It seems you really want to be killed by us. The two Lian Shenzong raised their eyebrows and rolled up their sleeves to prepare for an attack. Well, the two of you back down. Just then, a bland voice sounded behind them. After hearing the words, the two disciples turned their heads and looked back. After seeing the people clearly, their faces suddenly changed, and they fell down on the ground in a sincere and fearful manner. Disciple Luohe, disciple see the waves, see Lord Suzerain, Little Crazy 3, meet the young master. Chapter 45-25. Let's all get up. Jian Wushuang raised his hand towards the three. Suddenly, the two disciples in charge of the janitor, and the madman of the Red Whale gang, all stood up in congratulations. The two of you continue to guard the gate, you follow me. Jian Wushuang instructed 2 sentences, and even if he took the Red Whale gang's gang members Crazy 3, walked towards the Sovereign Hall. Okay. The Mad 3 smirked and immediately glared at the 2 disciples in charge of guarding the mountain gate. Then they followed behind Jian Wushuang and flew towards the main hall of the Sovereign. Looking at the back of Jian Wushuang and Fengsan, the 2 disciples guarding Shan Men could not help but glance at each other. That guy just knew the Lord. Looking like this, the suzerain is outside, there seems to be other forces. Back at the Sovereign's hall, the servants responsible for cleaning were swung back again. Jian Wushuang turned and sat on the main seat, and said, Crazy 3, give me a map of the forbidden area. Okay. Mad 3 responded with a sneer at first, and then groped, pulling out a roll of jade tube from the cuff and handing it to Jian Wushuang. Small master, the labels and maps above are all small ones to go to the actual measurement and then write and draw them. Basically, there will be no errors, you see. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, took the jade tube and spread it out, his eyes flashed suddenly. I saw the map of the Void Forbidden area depicted on this jade tube is extremely fine. There are 99 void cracks, all marked clearly. After that, every void crack in the Void Forbidden stationed by the caretaker, and each mountain ranges, all accurately portrayed. It can be said that there is nothing more meticulous than this map of the void. 87 void cracks in the ground are highlighted, and a red tick is drawn and the word unknown is written. Want to come to this Crazy 3 is not able to enter the 87th void cracks, but the sword is unparalleled understandable, naturally will not be difficult. Jian Wushuang continued to look back, but actually found a long list of names and detailed notes. Written in the first, it is the Jiyu Heng Shu Zun that Luo Ming told him the last time. Jiyu Heng Shu Zun, who became famous before 30,000 Shu Ji, was repaired to 6 marks when the universe disappeared, and was good at using moves. The nine-fingered emperor, who became famous before the 50,000 virtual eras, was modified to 6 marks when the universe disappeared, and was good at using moves. This is. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed, and he looked up at this Crazy 3. Crazy 3 quickly replied, back to the young master, this is some of the sense of vanity found by the Red Whale Gang in the void cracks, and then distinguished their identity, although not perfect, but it should be probably located in the void forbidden land. Number of vanity counts. Jian Wushuang heard nothing and said nothing. But in his heart, there was a tsunami, and he couldn't help showing joy. This list is too important. It is entirely possible to use this list, coupled with the recent trends of the top powers, to speculate that this time the Holocaust battle, the power of the virtual force universe, let the magical force universe deploy early. Snapped. Closing this bamboo tube, Jian Wushuang looked at Crazy 3, his eyes showed appreciation, and he said, "You are good." When he heard this, Mad 3 immediately felt a joy in his heart, and quickly sneered, "It's all a small thing, as long as the young master is satisfied." Subsequently, the two said a few words. Jian Wushuang sent away Crazy 3, let him continue staring at the forbidden ground. After Mad 3 left, Jian Wushuang sat on the throne alone, his eyes flashing for a while. Now that the war of catastrophe is about to begin, I have to go back to the divine universe myself, and convey the news to the of the universe, so that the divine universe can prepare for it early. However, there are two problems that make it difficult to go back. Now that he has just taken office soon, there must be many eyes watching him. If he leaves now, he will not show up for a long time, and he will inevitably be speculated and suspected. Second, Jian Wushuang didn't know how to return to the divine universe. According to this bamboo tube map, when I left the divine universe and entered the void universe, the void crack that appeared was the 23rd, and that's why it was NT really strong in the beginning. The men met because they all gathered in the 87th void. From this calculation, in addition to the 87 voids, which can travel back and forth to the virtual force universe, the 23rd voids can also travel back and forth. However, all these are just my calculations. If there is a slight difference, it will be a disaster. Jian Wushuang pressed and rubbed his brow, thinking continuously. Whether the calculation is correct or not can only be known by going to the void for a while. Besides that, this is the first question: how should God leave the refining consciously without being suspected? Thinking silently, Jian Wushuang frowned gradually. After a moment, the light flashed in his eyes, as if something had been thought of, his eyes flickered sharply. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stood up and walked towards the Lord's palace. Inside the palace, there are countless mysteries and books. Jian Wushuang then pulled out a book and flipped it up. After a moment, he re-plugged the mystery into the bookshelf and stepped towards the position of Taro's corpse. Puff! Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the back of Taro's corpse, stretched out his palms and pressed it on the back of Taro's corpse. Boom! Suddenly, countless virtual forces poured out of the sword without hands, and irrigated into the body of the corpse of Tai Luo. Suddenly, a weird scene happened. I saw that the shape of Tai Luo's corpse changed rapidly, the tall and burly figure had become thinner, and the stiff and numb face had a little more glory and ruddy. His facial features suddenly changed slightly, but turned into a sword unparalleled appearance. In a short span of time, 2 swords unparalleled appeared in the Lord's palace. Not only is the appearance the same, but even the breath comes from one body. Even if the person closest to Jian Wushuang is standing here, there is absolutely no way to tell which one is www.mtlnovel.com the deity. The corpse of Tai Luo stood up, competing as if he had come alive, with a smile on his face, and bent towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang saw this and nodded in satisfaction. The secretary he just looked at is the technique of reincarnation. Infiltrate the corpse of God with his own heart into his consciousness and breath, so that he becomes an avatar. Once in the refining deities, there were many big limits coming, and the disciples who were about to fall used this secret technique to make themselves equal to the rebirth in disguise. This mystery is more domineering than the ordinary mystery of external avatars. For example, the sword is unparalleled, and it can simply give instructions to make it free to move. and he can instantly transfer all his consciousness to this corpse of Tai Luo, making it his second life. Chapter 45-26. Inside the Lord's dormitory. The two swords, identical and with the same breath, stood alone and looked very weird. Here you are, looking after the refining god for me. Jian Wushuang stood up, looked at the corpse of Tai Luo, and said lightly, "Okay, even though the deity is gone, I will definitely be optimistic about the refining deities here." The sword Wushuang, transformed by the corpse of Tai Luo, smiled back. "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded, and strode away from the palace. That night, Jian Wushuang went to the place where the elder Banshan was, and let the elder Banshan take care of the refining Shenzong 1 or 2. When the elder Banshan heard that Jian Wushuang was about to return to the divine universe, he froze for a moment, and those dull eyes flashed a dim look. If not helpless, who would like to leave and leave? "Jian Wushuang, you go, this seat will take good care of Lian Shenzong." After taking a deep breath, Elder Banshan suppressed the throbbing in his heart and Shensheng said, "Then there is more trouble for Elder Banshan." Jian Wushuang took a deep look at Elder Banshan and nodded. After that, Jian Wushuang walked out of the palace where the Elder Banshan was. When stepping at the door, Jian Wusuo paused for a moment, without turning back, and said softly, "Be patient for a moment or two, until the end of the Holocaust, I will wait for the true return to the universe." "It is good." A smile appeared on Elder Banshan's face. After Jian Wushuang left, Elder Banshan looked up and looked through the ceiling to Woody Void. "Old man, I look forward to that day." Lian Shenzong Mountain Gate. They are still the two disciples of Refining God sect, responsible for guarding the gate. Well, it's so boring. It will be another 100 years until the next rotation. The disciple on the left complained. "Ha ha ha, if you have any complaints, tell your suzerain." The disciple on the right answered with a smile. The two were in a gag, but didn't feel so bored. "Wow Tilda." At this moment, the two of them suddenly felt dark, like a shadow, passing by. A slight gusty wind blew their clothing corners. "Huh? What just happened?" The disciple on the left rubbed his eyes, and looked around in confusion, but saw nothing. "It seems to be blowing the field." The disciple on the right answered with a shrug. Afterwards, the two of them left everything behind, and continued to snoring. At the same time, in the star field outside the Refining God sect. He struck wide black robe, wearing a hood, blocking most of his face, only showing his chin, and glanced back at Lian Shenzong, and strode away. I saw that his initial speed was not fast, but step by step, and in the end, he had torn through the vast sky like a horizontal thunder, and burst into the void forbidden. At the same time, outside the forbidden area in the void, 87th crack. A solemn ceremony is being held in a rainforest. I saw countless white bones stacked together, like jingguan, forming a high base. Each white bone was carved with a mysterious pattern, exuding a monstrous evil spirit. On the high platform, a bare-haired white-haired burly old man, holding 3 pillars of long incense in his hand, was constantly inserted in the gap between the white bone and the white bone. Below this platform, more than a dozen men and women wearing black robes with solemn faces stood respectfully. If at this time the strong man of the virtual universe saw these black robe men, he would be shocked and look horrified. Because, these more than 10 high-power people, all of them have once set foot on the peak of the virtual universe, overlooking all beings, and have an arbitrary existence. Each of them has a glorious past, and each of them once passed through an era, but in the end they all disappeared silently into the long river of time. Unexpectedly, at this moment, they were all together. Wisps of intangible air radiated from them, and all of them rushed towards the high platform. On the high platform, the white-haired burly old man, after filling the black long incense in his hand, put on a bronze mask on his face, holding a black wooden staff in his hand, and started to whine. "Beat up." Alas! The sky seemed to be towed and began to spin quickly. The fumes of the scent of long incense rushed straight into the sky. "Great Lord, your people. Did you feel our calling? Wake up, your people need your protection." The white-haired burly old man looked at the sky and thought. At the beginning, the voice was still weak, but it was higher and higher, until the end, his voice burst like a thunder. Wake up, boom! There was a huge explosion in the sky. At this moment, the sky cracked. A terrifying atmosphere, rolling along with the black smoke, spread out from the cracked sky, like a magical. This breath of horror is far from being incomparable to the invincible supreme. It is simply enough to tremble all eternity, kneeling in heaven and earth, and the heavenly man will bow his head. Master Xian Shen. Suddenly, the white-haired burly old man burst into ecstasy and excitement, kneeling suddenly. Beneath the high platform, the 10 or so peaking powerhouses who once asserted themselves had the same joy on their faces, kneeling towards the sky. Master Xian Shen. The magical mist of the sky was flying, and on the torn sky, an extremely ancient and deep voice came out. I wake up, and push all enemies in the world. God of God, wait for me, at the same time. Entrance to another location in the void. A black-robed figure was moving fast. Suddenly. What's the situation? Jian Wushuang's footsteps stopped fiercely. An immense ancient and terrifying breath came from the other side of Skyrim, which actually made him almost kneel. This breath just made him feel a point, and Han Maro stood upright, and a big terror between life and death surged in his heart. That location is the 87 crack. What happened there? Jian Wushuang's face was startled, and he lifted his eyes to look at the 87 crack. However, the other side was covered by a monstrous black magic mist, and Rao is the sword's magical power in his eyes, which cannot be seen. You have to hurry up. I'm afraid that this world war, the chaos of the chaos, will come faster than I thought. Jian Wushuang bit his teeth, which was extremely fast, and once again skyrocketed, and the whole person flashed into the void for a moment like the passing streamer. At the 23rd crack, the Ram Supreme, who had had a messenger with him, was already waiting there. Seeing Jian Wushuang flying, the Ram Supreme face was ugly, and he stepped forward and said, Jian Wushuang, did you just feel that horrible breath? Jian Wushuang nodded his face solemnly, and said, let's go back to the divine universe first and report these things to the of the universe. Chapter 45-27. 87th crack. The call to sacrifice continued, and an overwhelming amount of pressure spread out. At the 23rd crack, Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme stepped forward and stepped into the crack. Click and wipe. The crack in the void twisted, devouring the figure of Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme, and then they disappeared. The familiar sense of dizziness struck again. When Jian Wushuang and the Ram supremely opened their eyes again, they had reached the starry sky. The same starry sky, but the atmosphere in the universe is already different. Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme glanced at each other, and there was a movement in each other's heart. Sure enough, in addition to the 87th crack, this 23rd crack can also go back and forth between the divine universe and the virtual universe. The two were about to walk towards the camp of the gods. A shout rang suddenly. Strange thief, die boom. I saw a 6-claw white dragon, rushing through the clouds and driving fast. In his mouth, there was a huge fireball flame, as if the sun was in his mouth. Stop. The Ram's supreme face changed suddenly, and then they remembered that the two had just emerged from the cracks in the void, and they must have been treated by others as virtual universes. However, he hadn't waited for his explanation. The fireball had already slammed into the sky, hitting a broken channel directly in the void, and hit the sword Wushuang and the Ram Supreme straight. This fireball, just the spread of coercion and hot temperature, is far from being able to resist by the Ram. Just as the Ram Supreme faced despair, the sword Wushuang next to him stepped out, holding the hilt of the Taro Excalibur at the waist. Sword to cut. Laugh. A shocking match of puppets, like a long galaxy, slashed away, and split the big fireball in half. Countless flames spread, reflecting the faces of Jian Wushuang and the Supreme Ram. Alas! Put away the Taro magic sword, Sword Wushuang looked up and looked into the giant dragon eye, and flashed the dreaded 6-claw white dragon, calmly said, Long Qing, I haven't seen you in such a long time. I still think you are so stupid and stupid. Click, click. The tens of thousands of long, 6-clawed white dragons flickered with white horns, and immediately turned into a young man wearing a white robe with gold edges and a pair of horns. Sword unparalleled. Long Qing narrowed his eyes and hummed softly. The sword is unparalleled, and the pointed ears are restored to their original shape, transforming a virtual force into a divine power, and turning it back into a true human race. This guy didn't die in the Void universe. Also, this guy seems to be stronger again. Long Qing's eyes flashed with surprise. This time Jian Wushuang entered the virtual universe. In addition to the gods knowing the specific situation, as for the other disciples, even the two disciples of the gods are not clear about the specific situation of Jian Wushuang and others in the virtual universe. What? Therefore, Long Qing thought that the sword was unparalleled, and he had long been killed in the virtual universe. Rumble. After that, several figures came in a mighty manner. After seeing Jian Wushuang, he suddenly felt a stunned look, with unbelievable colors in his eyes. Is sword unparalleled? Jian Wushuang returned from the virtual universe. Jian Wushuang is still the first person to return from the virtual universe. Everyone was shocked. Jian Wushuang frowned, ignored them, and said indifferently, "Excuse me." After that, Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme turned into two streamers, which instantly cut through the sky and swept towards the base camp where the gods of the universe were. This time, the reason why Jian Wushuang did not choose to communicate with the gods of the universe, but came back in person because it was important, such as the map of the void and the deployment of combat power, and the elder Banshan spent tens of thousands of Chaos Period collections. The information must be handed to the of the universe, and the sword can be reassured without both sides. After a few hours, the base camp has arrived. I haven't seen it for hundreds of years. There is no difference in the base camp, except that it has become more dignified. The people responsible for patrolling the base camp are full of expressions. When they think about it, they also guess what will happen in the war. Sword Wushuang approached. The monk responsible for guarding the base camp was preparing to intercept, and after seeing the arrival clearly, he suddenly asked in amazement, "You are Vice Captain Jian Shuangshuang? Are you back from the virtual universe?" Jian Wushuang looked at this person, and saw that this man was wearing the 7th team's robes. It was a member of the 7th team. When Jian Wushuang fought for 5,000 years, this man also fought alongside him. "It's me." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, without meaning of nonsense, and said, "Take me to see Elder God." The 7th team player saw Jian Wushuang's grim expression, understands that the matter must be urgent, and quickly took Jian Wushuang to the Temple of God. Along the way, many eyes looked at Jian Wushuang one after another, startled with suspicion, and then they were shocked. Jian Wushuang is back. He is back from the virtual universe. Ignoring these discussions, Jian Wushuang stepped into the temple hall of the Elder God. In the temple god's hall, the old-fashioned god is wearing a large salamander and is reading a book. Lan Lan and Lan Su stand on both sides and hold the lamp for him. Hearing the footsteps, God looked up and saw Jian Wushuang coming in. There was no surprise on his face, but a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, nodding, "You are here." Waved his hand, he motioned Lan Su and Lan Lan to retreat on both sides. "Yes." Lan Su and Lan Lan answered each other, and when they passed by, they looked at Jian Wushuang with similar surprises. After the two left, the whole hall was suddenly left with only two gods, Wushan. "Master Elder God." Jian Wushuang arched his hand toward the of the earth. "You and I don't need to be polite." The Jew put down the book in his hand, and patted the position next to him, motioning to Jian Wushuang to sit next to him. "You worked hard during this time." Jew God looked at the vicissitudes of Jian Wushuang's eyes and sighed lightly, somehow distressed. Jian Wushuang sat next to the of the universe, and smiled when he heard it with the phrase of the of universe, "Everything was worth it." God knows that his sword Wushuang is in the refining Shenzong, seemingly calm, but in fact, he tightens his mind every day, dare not be half relaxed, for fear of the risk of his own exposure. The effort it takes is simply incalculable. "Sir Master, please look at these two things first." Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang's right hand, a map of the forbidden area, a list of combat power, and the bamboo tube entrusted to him by Zhong Shan all appeared in his hands. "It is good." There is no unnecessary nonsense in the of the universe, and he understands that a war is about to begin. He first lifted the bamboo tube of Banshan and looked carefully. In the temple of the gods, the candlelight swayed for a while. The of the gods slowly looked, his eyebrows gradually wrinkled. Chapter 45-28. In the hall of the cosmic god, there was a silence. The god of the god looked down and read the news that it took tens of thousands of virtual periods in Banshan before collecting the news. The frowns became more and more tight, and his face was not very good-looking. Jian Wushuang sat silently without questioning. Needless to say, he also knows that there must be some bad news in this bamboo tube. Otherwise, the Jew would not be so heavy. A moment later, after reading a roll of bamboo tube, the Jew looked up at the sky and sighed for a long time. Rubbing his eyebrows, God of the Golem continued to look through the map of the forbidden land in the void. Immediately after opening the map, the of the face, who was still quite heavy, raised his eyebrows immediately. "Huh? What's this?" He looked sideways at Jian Wushuang. Sword Wushuang replied, "Master God, this is a map of the void forbidden land opposite the void universe, and the void forbidden land is the entrance to our magical universe." "Is that so?" Lord Elder God nodded. After reading the map all the time, there was no change in the look of Jew God, until he saw the calculation of the imaginary universe combat power at the back. His mind skyrocketed, and his face showed a touch of joy. "Okay, this calculation of the combat power is too timely." Jew God turned to look at Jian Wushuang, and there was a gleam in his eyes, full of appreciation. He naturally understood the importance of this thing. With this list of combat power calculations, he can definitely make arrangements for the future of the catastrophe and make a corresponding plan for each of the 6 mark and above powerhouses. What's the scariest? The unknown is the most terrifying. Now, with this list of combat effectiveness, it is tantamount to understand the details of the virtual universe. I didn't expect that after the first universe had experienced the void universe, it still has such rich heritage, and there are still so many invincible and supreme existences in the universe. After laying down this list of maps, the god of Jew made a sound. The number of 6-marked virtual respects recorded on this list alone exceeds the number of hands. He believes that this is only part of it, and there are certainly many 6-mark vanities, which are not recorded on it. Jian Wushuang, the old man has a request. Jew God turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Master Jew God said this seriously, "If there is anything I need, just ask." Jian Wushuang calmed his face and replied seriously, "Okay." God of Nod nodded, and then replied, "Sword Wushuang, when you return to the virtual universe, be sure to make all the 6 marks of the virtual universe that can be clearly recorded and not fallen, as the last give me a detailed list. These people will most likely participate in this catastrophe." "No problem." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, which was not difficult for him. The words turned. Jian Wushuang seemed to remember something, his expression gradually became serious, and he said, "Yes, Lord God, I encountered an unexpected situation when I returned to the divine universe." "Oh, what happened?" With a brow at the head of the Jew, Jian Wushuang's expression was so serious that it was certainly not a trivial matter. Immediately, Jian Wushuang would tell thee of the atmosphere that he felt in the void forbidden ground. After speaking, the spirit of God in the eyes of the suddenly soared by 3 inches, and always had a sharp look on his peaceful face. Jian Wushuang, if I'm not mistaken, the breath you feel in the forbidden space should be of vanity. Virtual God. Jian Wushuang heard a word. Yes. The god of Nod nodded and said, "The false is the initiator of the last catastrophe, and it is also the strongest existence of the virtual universe. Even the old man dare not say that he should stabilize him. It was fortunate that the battle of the Holocaust was based on our divine universe. The virtual gods in our universe will be suppressed by the law of the avenue, and their strength will be weakened. Therefore, the old man could only defeat him seriously. Do you remember the last black arm you encountered on the extraterrestrial battlefield?" the Jew asked. "Of course I remember." Jian Wushuang nodded. That was his first battle after he came here, and Zhu Xingshengzi died in that battle, naturally impressed. Today's sword unparalleled, Compared to that time, it has naturally improved, and the realm has reached the middle extreme, but when his dark arm covering the sky, he still feels a cold back. That was not at all a horror with him in one dimension. The master of this black arm is an imaginary god. From that day on, the old man knew that this guy was about to wake up and the catastrophe would come again. Unfortunately, no matter how old the man is, he also thought that the virtual would need at least thousands of times of chaos to be truly awake, free from restraint, and return to the world. But according to what you said, I'm afraid of the gods. I'm awake now. Speaking of which, there was a gleam of cold light in the eyes of Jew God. Is it so fast? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's breathing felt a little rushed. An imminent sense of urgency surged in Jian Wushuang's heart. Sword unparalleled, it seems our pace is going to accelerate. The god took a deep breath and said, "We must get Feng Tianqi, one of the patriarchs, before the war of catastrophe begins. As long as Feng Tianqi is in hand, we will have a chance to win after the start of the Holocaust. Otherwise the crusade of the virtual universe can advance and retreat and defend, which is difficult for us to deal with. And as long as Feng Tianqi is in your hands, you can enter the virtual universe, insert Feng Tianqi into the void, and completely block their retreat. At that time, under the suppression and exclusion of the law of the avenue, the old man will have confidence to lead our magical universe and defeat them completely. Even if we cannot end this cataclysm on the spot, they will be able to make a great deal of vitality and win a few odds for our magical universe." After the words fell, Jian Wushuang suddenly understood the importance of Feng Tianqi. "Master God, how can I get this banner?" Jian Wushuang asked. The of the universe heard the words, the eyes twinkled and spit out 8 words. "Nanshuan Xiandao, Feng Tian Ancestor." Feng Tian Ancestor? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked at the god of Ju, revealing a strange look. "The sword is unparalleled. The old man knows that you are wondering why the old man knows exactly where the sky banner is, and why not take it." The Jew shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "This old ancestor and the old man are old. It can be regarded as the same origin. When the old man was not yet strong, he had a festival with him and snatched him. I feel ashamed of him. If the old man went to him and asked him to surrender Feng Tianqi, he would definitely refuse to say that the old man would have to run into a grey nose. As a last resort, the old man did not want to force him to kill him. Therefore, I can only send you to Nanxian Xiandao for a walk. If that old ancestor is stubborn and really refuses to care about the overall situation, then the old man will have to use some extraordinary means." Chapter 45-29. In the temple of the temple, the candlelight was shaking. Jian Wushuang and the of the 2 people, this talk is a whole night. Go to Nanshuan Xiandao, to find Feng Tian's ancestor? Jian Wu's eyes twinkled, thinking slightly. I am afraid that it will take some time to go there, but in the refined god sect, there is a corpse of Tai Luo sitting in the town, and there are elders such as Banshan and others to help. It should not be too much to think about. It is good. Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang nodded his head and agreed. Seeing this, the of courage flashed with relief, and said, "The sword is unparalleled. The old man must remind you a few words. The guy Feng Tian has a strange temperament and has always been unhappy to play cards according to common sense. If you meet him, keep basic politeness, but you do need to accommodate him, or he will tease you in every way." Is that so? Jian Wu's eyes flashed, indicating that he knew. At last, the of the universe stretched out his right hand and patted Jian Wushuang on the shoulder. For the first time, he said solemnly and earnestly, "Sword Wushuang, the rise and fall of our universe, there is a large part, it is tied to you. Master Ju God has spoken heavily, my sword Wushuang must be for the universe, go to the fire, and never die." Jian Wushuang also solemnly returned. In fact, for Jian Wushuang, now he has mastered the practice method of the virtual universe. Even if the divine universe is destroyed, he can continue to practice in the virtual universe. Now he is still the master of the refining divine sect, no worse than in the divine universe. However, the divine universe is his home and the place where he gave everything to grow up. His lover, his loved ones, and his division are deeply rooted in the divine universe. For this reason, he will never die. On the second day, before everyone noticed, Jian Wushuang had left the base camp and rushed towards Nanshuan Xiandao. Nanshuan Xiandao is located in the Nanshuan star field, which is not the center of the universe. According to its location, it is already considered a barren land. In the star domain, most ordinary mortals live. Half-year later, located at the edge of the universe, a black-robed figure stepped out of the cosmic passage. Is Nanning's star field convenient? Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed a tiredness, and he continued to go all out, even though he felt some fatigue. I was preparing to release my divine power to find where Nanshuan Xiandao was in the Nanshuan star field, but I found that the entire Nanshuan star field seemed to be covered by a layer of mist, and the divine power could not be eroded. You don't have to think about it, it must be the handwriting of that old ancestor. He shook his head, and Jian Wushuang did not care about it. He used his divine power to capture the position of the ancestor of Feng Tian. After all, he came to be beggared if he came this time. Call out. Swordless Wu stepped on one foot, and immediately fell into the Nanshuan star domain, the most prosperous city. Sweet gourds, selling gourds. Suzhou Jinlanfang Rouge, come and see. The city is so bustling that many mortals are walking on the street, and there are hawkers on both sides walking around and yelling, it looks like a firework on earth. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help feeling a little sigh in his heart. Since his strength, he has faced countless killings every day. His heart is tense and he has never stopped walking. Landscape. A mortal life, although short, has his pleasure. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang reached out to stop an elderly man and asked with a smile, "Old man, do you know where Nanshuan Xiandao is?" Nanshuan Xiandao? After hearing that, the old man asked, "Afterlife, did you go to the old teacher to listen to the class?" "Old master?" Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows when he heard the words. The old immortal teacher in the old man's mouth was afraid that he was the old ancestor. Nodded his head, Jian Wushuang replied, "Yes, old man, do you know where is the Nanxian Xiandao where the old ferry master is? Out of the city, go straight to the south. You will see a piece of the South China Sea. When you get there, there will be boats for fishing. You spend some silver and rent a boat and go straight to the sea and head south. If there is a fate, you will encounter Nanshuan Xiandao. If you have no fate, you will search the South China Sea and you will not see the trace of the old ferry." The old man said, "Thanks a lot." Jian Wushuang arched his hand at the old man, and immediately stepped on it, disappearing. This scene fell into the eyes of mortals crossing the street, causing a sudden shock. Countless people knelt down, crying immortals. However, after seeing Jian Wushuang leaving, the old man opened a slight smile. "Little guy, it's not that simple to find an old man." Shaking his head, the old man also disappeared. However, the passers-by around him seemed to have not noticed it. Just one breath. Sword Wushuang reached the edge of the South China Sea. Numerous fishermen erected wooden fishes in a drying net and air-dried. Jian Wushuang thought for a while. Instead of directly looking for Nanshuan Xiandao, he picked up 2 stones and turned them into silver too, and bought a black boat in the hands of a fisherman. Wow! Whooping light boat went into the sea. Jian Wushuang stood on the bow of the boat, standing against his hands, and the violent wind blew his hair. No matter how turbulent the waves were, he stood still and couldn't speak easily. The whooping kayak made a long mark on the blue sea, and Jian Wushuang was among them. I also saw many other boats and ships, all of whom were visiting the immortals. After 3 days, Jian Wushuang's brow gradually wrinkled. According to common sense, with his speed, it should have been strolling around the South China Sea. However, he found that he seemed to be spinning around after a fog of fog. "Play me." Jian Wushuang looked up into the distance, and his eyes were impatient. From the advent of this star field, he did not deliberately converge. This ancestor of the sky should have known his existence. Jian Wushuang confessed himself that after coming to this star field, his behavior was quite polite. Whatever the ancestor of this letter, he should show up. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang's brows became more and more wrinkled and tighter. The impatience in his eyes became more apparent. At the same time, In the South China Sea, there is an island surrounded by sky and clouds. The island is full of fairy spirits and fairy cranes soaring, which has a taste of fairyland on earth. On the island, a bamboo forest. An old man with a handkerchief and a hand-cranked lupine sits on the floor with his knees crossed. In front of the old man, a chessboard was set up. There was no one on the opposite side of the board, but every time after the old man moved his fingers, the board automatically appeared with black spots to play against him. Master, that person has been trapped in the formation for 3 days, shall we not care about him? A raw child with red lips and white teeth stood beside the old man and asked quietly. Chapter 45-30. Nanshuan Xiandao, among a bamboo forest. Feng Tian's ancestors from the same era as the gods of Ju, played chess on their own. Beside him, a young boy with red lips and white teeth stood quietly, holding a bowl with a large bowl in his hand. The bowl is full of tea, but the tea is reflected in a picture. I saw in the picture a young man with black hair and black eyes with pale gold eyes, standing on a small canopy boat, standing with his hands on his back, constantly spinning around the bowl. Master, how did you say that this person found you? You haven't asked the world about it, you have retired the universe for so many years, and most people don't even know you exist. The little boy asked softly. Snapped. Feng Tian's ancestor dropped her on the chessboard and snorted coldly. Who else can it be? It must be the old man of the god of the gods, and told this person to let this person come to the old man to seal the sky banner. Xiao Dao Tong smashed his tongue when he heard the words. I am afraid that there is only his own master in the entire universe. Dare to call the of the universe an old man? Master, I'd like to lend Feng Tianqi if I don't see it. I watched the sky last night and found that there are 7 stars in a row, forming a dragon slaughtering force. I am afraid that it will not be long before a calamity will arise and we will lose the luck of our universe. Hesitating for a moment, the little boy said boldly. He was giving a finger to his hand, and the ancestor Feng Tian glared at the young boy and said, Are you a master or am I a master? When do you want to teach for a teacher? With a cold hum, Feng Tian's ancestor said, If it wasn't for the old man who had snatched the opportunity to become a teacher, where is the position of the Jew who can accommodate him now? It should be for the teacher. When he grabbed the chance of the old man, he considered the feeling of being a teacher. Now that the world is in trouble, he wants to come to the old man. What does he think of me, his tool person? After hearing this, the little boy couldn't help but spit out his tongue and said nothing more. He knew that his master had been hesitant about the incident that year. After all, it was the only opportunity to break through the current realm. It was an exaggeration to be robbed of such an opportunity. Master, why don't I tell this person and let this person leave? The young boy asked tentatively. Tell him what? This man has been trapped in the formation for a few days, and he will naturally retreat and leave on his own. Feng Tian's ancestor continued to point his finger and shook his head. However, just then, Feng Tian's ancestor suddenly seemed to notice something, his face suddenly changed, and he was furious. What do you want to do, this guy? Next moment, the ancestor of Feng Tian disappeared instantly. And now in the South China Sea. Swordless double-footed awning bow, looking at the ancestor of Feng Tian who has not appeared for a long time, the impatience between the eyebrows finally broke out. Feng Tian, the ancestor, you can't come out, then I ruined the South China Sea and destroyed the billions of souls on this star. Anyway, when people from different universes come over, everyone will die. It's better to die early. Superb. Jian's eyes were cold and his right foot was stomped hard. The whole man rose to the sky and stood on the South China Sea. With the grasp of Jian Wushuang's right hand, the billions of tons of seawater in the South China Sea all boiled, forming tens of thousands of waterspouts, and Unicom Skyrim. At this moment, the mortal people who live in the entire Nanshuan starfield can see this across the sky, like a waterspout in the last days of disaster, with a deep horror on their faces, kneeling on the ground one by one, mouth calling immortals for their lives. Stop. At this moment, a meteorite-like figure telling the movement quickly burst into the air, dragging a long flame in the air. For a moment, the terrifying coercion deterred all directions, and the thousands of seawater that formed the tornado collapsed and returned to the sea. Boy, are you looking for death? An old man wearing a martyr's robe with his hair wrapped in a thin wooden stick is staring at Xiong Wushuang with a beard. Feng Tian ancestor? Jian Wushuang turned his head toward Feng Tian's ancestor. The coercion of Feng Tian's ancestor was almost like a mountain of millions. Just for a moment, he almost made the sword unparalleled. Faced with such pressure like a prison, Jian Wushuang's knee was never bent half a minute. Feng Tian, the ancestor, now the entire universe is in danger, and life and death can only exist in one thought. All the supreme in the universe are all for the safety of the universe. You will never regret it, but you will escape from the world and hide here for your personal pleasure, regardless of the entire universe. Really rotten. Jian Wushuang saw that Feng Tian's ancestor did not act on him for the first time, and he could not help but let his heart loose slightly, and then looked coldly at Feng Tian's ancestor and said. He knew this, and some of them meant to kidnap the ancestor of Feng Tian from the vantage point of morality, but he had to say that once the divine power fell, at that time, maybe the entire universe would be destroyed and massacred. This matter has been closely related to everyone in the universe. Moreover, if he can't wake up Feng Tian's ancestor this time, then it will be the thunderous means of the gods of the heaven. Even if this old ancestor is strong, facing the of the sky, there is only one way to lose. In other words, he is not so much here to borrow Feng Tianqi as to save Feng Tian's ancestors. Well, what is the universe's life and death to do with the old man? The old man has already deployed 10 million arrays here. Even if the people in the virtual universe come in, how can I help him? Feng Tian's ancestor snorted coldly and said disdainfully. Naive. Jian Wushuang interrupted the words of the ancestor Feng Tian, and said a little embarrassedly, Feng Tian, ancestor, do you really think that with these arrays you laid, can you really resist the million army of the virtual universe? The ancestor of Feng Tian heard that he was trying to refute. Seeing Jian Wushuang continued to say, okay, even if you can have a place to live among the millions of troops in the virtual universe, would you like to be a dog of the bereaved family and hide in Tibet all day long? Before Jian Wushuang saw Feng Tian's ancestors again, he wanted to persuade Feng Tian's ancestors kindly, but when he saw Feng Tian's ancestors, these thoughts disappeared immediately. He will use the most straightforward words to turn into a slap to completely wake up Feng Tian's ancestors. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang continued to speak. Feng Tian, the ancestor of this time, I'm sure you know the purpose of this, and I'm here to borrow you from Feng Tianqi. But looking at it like this, you probably won't borrow it, but the boy has something to tell you clearly. Protecting the universe and fighting for it is never a matter for one person, but for everyone in the entire universe. Everyone knows that there is a finished egg under the covering nest, and the broken home of the kingdom does not exist. Feng Tian, the ancestor, you are a senior compared to the junior. You should understand these reasons. When it comes to the end, the sound of Jian Wushuang is already like a dull thunder, banging. Chapter 45-31. There are finished eggs under the nest. The country is broken, and the home does not exist. You should understand these truths. After Jian Wushuang said these words, his voice was already roaring like a thunder, shaking his deafness, and arousing the sea of water again. And at this time, a young boy had been driving Juguang from a distance. Junior, do you dare to insult me? After this remark, Feng Tian's ancestor trembled with trembling, extended his fingers and tremblingly pointed at Jian Wushuang. His forehead was blue and blue. I think he was an ancestor of the sky, born in the beginning of the universe, and chaos has not yet opened. When did anyone dare to face him and blame him? I think you're looking for death. The endless atmosphere of Hongmeng and Shenhuang emerged from Feng Tian's ancestors, surging to the extreme. Master. At this moment, the little boy who came from driving the light, grabbed Feng Tian's ancestor's arm, and quickly advised, Master, you dissipate, you are so old, go what are you doing with the juniors? How bad is it to be angry? While talking, Xiao Dao Tong winked at Jian Wushuang, and let Jian Wushuang quickly apply oil to the soles of the feet, and the wind was screaming. Juvenile, do you want to provoke the teacher? Let go of the teacher. Feng Tian's ancestor glared at the young boy. On the other side, watching Feng Tian's ancestors and the young boy who madly winked at him, Jian Wushuang half stepped back, took a deep breath, and said humbly, "Senior Feng Tian, the junior did not mean to insult you, the junior was just telling the truth." After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued to speak. "Senior Feng Tian, the junior will only say it once, after you listen, you can borrow or not Feng Tianqi, it is with you, and the junior will not force it anymore." Hearing this, the anger of Feng Tian's ancestor's heart was gone, but he still had a face overcast. "Well, junior, the old man will have to see, what are you going to say?" "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded, without hesitation, and said, "Senior Feng Tian, I know that Lord God of God once snatched your chance and made you lose the opportunity of the impact. Therefore, you have always been resentful, so you are disheartened, you live in a drowsiness, and you no longer care about the universe. Alas." Sword Wushuang stepped out, the front of the words turned, and his tone became heavy. "But you can see that Lord God of Evil has become a town, sitting alone in the universe battlefield for hundreds of millions of years, and not teaching the aliens of the universe to take a step. Do you know that in the midst of the catastrophe, the wind and rain are shaking, countless universes are supreme, in order to protect the universe, rather sing and die in the rain instead of living under a fence? I have fought for 5,000 years in the extraterritorial battlefields. I have seen countless days of proud people in the world, who have died one after another, just to stop the half-inch of the virtual universe. I used to know that Sword Emperor Taro once defeated the world's invincible, to suppress 9 heavens and 10 places with one sword, but in order to resist the aliens of the universe, buried the universe, all the people of the country disappeared. I used to know that Tianjiao East, the Lord's body, can cut the supreme, but it is worldly proud, difficult to control in all ages, but also died in the hands of aliens. Before he died, half step back. I also see thousands of unknown people in my universe. They are a powerful person. They are the masters of the Holy Land. They are the darlings of heaven and earth. They are the arrogance of the world, but die silently for the universe. There is no complaint. Why are they so willing to die? Because they know that this universe is their home. They know that behind them is their family, disciples, wife and children. Therefore, there is only one way to choose from this campaign, and that is death battle. Speaking of this, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, his tone became a bit lighter, and looked straight at Feng Tian's ancestor, and said, "But they have no obligation to stipulate that they must die for the universe. They like you, you can settle down for a while, regardless of the world, and wait until the alien army arrives, and find a hiding place at will." Jian Wushuang's words were finished, no generous singing, no pretense of grief, but the most plain narrative. However, it was this bland narrative, but it was extremely shocking, like a heavy hammer, and it was severely hit on the heart of Feng Tian's ancestor. Feng Tian's ancestors were silent. He stared at Jian Wushuang, and said nothing. He is not a man with a corrupt nature. Otherwise, when Jian Wushuang first took the life of hundreds of millions of souls and threatened her, he would kill Jian Wushuang in anger under the fury. But there was a knot in his heart. This knot was due to the appearance of the universe, and he was locked tightly by himself. Jian Wushuang's words still did not untie his knot, but in another position, he tied a bigger knot again. "Master, I see. I see if you would lend Feng Tianqi to him, in case the universe goes down, it will be us who are in the end." Xiaodarotong was immature, some tearful whispers. "To shut up." Feng Tian's ancestor glared at Xiaodarotong, then looked at Jian Wushuang. Although his heart was also shaken, he still pretended to carelessly murmured, "Well, they are willing to die, that is their stupid, what does it have to do with my husband? Hugh wants to use righteousness to oppress me." After that, he glanced at Jian Wushuang, and when Jian Wushuang really turned around, he yelled angrily, "Boy, stop for your husband." Oh! Originally, he had no hope for Feng Tian's ancestors. He planned to let the god of the gods make a sword unparalleled. He paused, looked back at Feng Tian's ancestors, and frowned. "Feng Tian, what else do you do?" I saw Feng Tian's ancestor glaring at Jian Wushuang, raised his head, and snorted from his nose. "Little guy, don't rush away first, the old man didn't say no to borrow. In this way, you accompany the old man to play a game of chess. You won the old man by playing chess, And the old man lent Feng Tianqi to you, how? After hearing this, Yu read the book www.ukanshu.com. Jian Wushuang hasn't said anything yet. The little boy next to Feng Tian's ancestor suddenly burst into ecstasy. What level is his master playing chess? He knows too well. That is the smelly chess basket, the existence of pure food delivery. He quickly winked at Jian Wushuang, so that Jian Wushuang should come down. Jian Wushuang frowned secretly. Although I don't know which one of the old ancestors was playing, but looking at the happy appearance of the Xiaodao Tong next to him, he nodded and responded, it is good. That boy, you go to Nanshuan's Yandao with the old man, we have a point. The ancestor of Feng Tian snorted, and then grabbed it with a big hand. An invisible big hand grabbed the sword Wushuang, stepped on it, turned into a skylight, disappeared on the surface of the South China Sea. When Jian Wushuang saw a flower in front of her eyes, when she reacted, she had already reached an immortal, bamboo-lined island. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.